We're going to turn our attention to some baseball. We got a great series, Who Knew, up at Citizens Bank Park this week as the Phillies are hosting the Diamondbacks. The series is split. They just came off a 4-game sweep of the Pirates, but Seth Everett from NBC Sports Radio joins me, the 24/7 Sports Talk Network, which you can listen at NBCSportsRadio.com. And, the Sixers are playing well. The draft is going on. No one's paying attention to these Phillies, Seth, but should they start paying attention to this team? Are they going to make us pay attention to them?
Well, they're interesting. I mean, look, there were no expectations, so there's really not a lot of people thinking that, it's a magic carpet ride. I don't know that it is either. And I'm not raining on anybody's parade. They've been entertaining. They've been fun to watch. Last year, there were about 6 teams that really turned the corner quickly. It was Arizona, Colorado, Milwaukee, Minnesota, and the Yankees.
Right.
This year, the Phillies are one of those teams, and they're interesting. It's still a long season, but it made the division a lot more interesting because if Atlanta's better and Philly's better and the Mets are better and Washington came down a peg, well, now all of a sudden you have a close race. And isn't that what we want? Like, all I want is meaningful games. Yeah. I don't have a horse in this race. I make no secret. I am a Phillies fan, but I don't need this to be do or die. I don't need the expectation of 2011 where this has to be a win. I just need this to be a scenario where ultimately, September comes around and we're talking about a series and saying, hey, you better tune into that because it's important.
Well, let me ask you then, what are some of the pieces on this team that make you think that, okay, maybe this team has some legs this year? Because sometimes, the first month, a couple guys, we see guys all the time hit 5 home runs in the first week of the season. They hit 5 the rest of the whole year. So what are some of the things about this team that say they might be interesting longer than we thought?
Well, the offense hasn't been great. The offense, I thought, was going to be the best. They started
4 guys hitting under 200 the other day.
Yeah, and they're winning. The pitching has been, and it's not just Arrieta, the pitching has been a huge bonus. The fact that these guys can compete, but I'll throw caution to that in saying, Bud Black, who I think is one of the smartest pitching minds I've ever met, last year he didn't know what he had in his rotation, and he said in Colorado, he said his biggest goal was to just find out what he had. That was all he was looking for. And then by the time that the All-Star break came, they're like, "Dude, you're in the playoffs. Like, what are you doing?" But it was still an evaluation year. I think the Phillies are taking a very similar attitude. Between Rick Kranitz and Gabe Kapler, they're just trying to see what they have in situations and who battles and who doesn't. And I'm interested. That's all I'm saying. It's raised an eyebrow. It's not where if it's Memorial Day and this team is 2 out and 6 or 7 games over 500, it's a different conversation.
They play the Arizona Diamondbacks, who have been very good. Let's look inside the National League East. Nationals 11-14. It's only the first month.
Hold on one second. You can blame the Diamondbacks for Gabe Kapler because the trend was to go young. And Torey Lovullo, who is, I think, younger than Gabe, is a guy who came in and really impressed a lot of people in Arizona. Torey Lovullo and Craig Counsell in Milwaukee are the reason why all these teams are hiring these young rookies, Aaron Boone and Alex Cora and what's-his-face Martinez in Washington. Like, all these guys are as a product of the success of Dave Roberts, Craig Counsell, and Torey Lovullo.
Yeah, well, what's-his-face Martinez might be looking at the some trouble here. They're not that they're 11-14 slow start, but what are some of the things about the Nationals that might make you think maybe they're going to be struggling for a little while?
Well, Scherzer got beat a couple of times. I just hope he's healthy. With Strasburg, you never know. I still think on paper they're more talented than everybody else.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I say that. Ultimately, it's one of those circumstances where I need to see this whole thing play out. If you're asking me on April 26th or whatever day it is, if you're asking me, are the Nationals going to win the division? I'd still say yes. I'm still, I'm not jumping off the bandwagon yet. Right. There's too much talent there, but they've scuffled and they haven't gotten out to a hot start. But the story is New York, Philly, and Atlanta, who have suddenly now, kind of flipped the switch and are playing better baseball.
Yeah, Nationals, by the way, 5.5 behind the Mets, who are 15-7. Phillies beat the Arizona Diamondbacks last night. It was a great pitching matchup, Arrieta versus Greinke. You got to see if you went to the ballpark last night.
That's cool, yeah.
Yeah, so that's some of the stuff on the NL side. Look at the AL East here. You got the Red Sox and the Yankees, but how about the Blue Jays going neck and neck? So of those three, the Blue Jays are the obvious team that maybe will be fading, or do you think they're in it? It will be a 3-team race in the AL East.
Well, I took the Red Sox. I said that the Red Sox were head over heels better than everybody.
Yes.
I said that at the beginning of the season. I didn't understand how all these people were picking New York. I never saw that. But that being said, it's a circumstance where we're talking about a ball club in Boston that just has veterans starting pitching. I mean, none of these teams, nobody has 5 veterans like this with Pomerantz and Price and Chris Sale and and Rick Porcello. That was the name that was escaping me. So many guys with pedigrees and experience. It's funny. Like, we talk about what managers inherit when they take over a club. Like, Gabe Kapler knew what he was coming into when he took this club, and he knew they were young, they were kind of wet behind the ears, and you didn't know what the identity was. Alex Cora took a job where he knew exactly what he had, and he knew exactly how talented they were.
Well, I know we talked about Kapler last week, and you explained that you had done some work with him, and you were like, wow, this guy. But have you seen that he has already kind of learned from some of his mistakes and kind of grown in just 3 weeks of managing?
Well, I'll say this. His press conferences are more tame, but I don't want him to lose his enthusiasm. I hope that I wasn't misconstrued in saying that I don't think that there's something infectious about Gabe Kapler.
No, I think the message you were saying was that this guy was an interesting guy.
He was interesting. You never knew what was coming out of his mouth next, and that's the fascinating thing. That's why I think to cover them is a blast. And to his press conferences, anytime I find them streaming, if I see it on Twitter, I click on it. I always want to hear what the guy's going to say, because there's always a chance it's either going to be really insightful or really freaking out there.
And it has been kind of interesting. He withstood a firestorm that first week of the season, but as we said, the Sixers have kind of overshot.
What we said then was don't jump to conclusions.
That's right. You did say that.
Just don't. It's a long season, and they had to know what they were doing. I mean, they didn't sign him and just say, oh, let's just pick a guy out of a hat and give him the job. Like, there was a lot of thought that went into this.
Well, they'll finish off their series. They're taking on the Diamondbacks, finishing off that 3-game after that 4-game sweep of the Pirates, which had a lot of people open their eyes to say, all right, let's pay attention to the Phils. 15-8 in progress against Arizona. Seth Everett, NBC Sports Radio, the 24/7 live sports talk network. You can listen at NBCSportsRadio.com. Seth, take care, pal.
You got it, man. Good talking to you. Enjoy the draft tonight.